And next, may I invite Professor Srirama Rao, the chairperson of the International Conference on One Medicine, One Science, to deliver the opening statement. Please welcome.
So good morning, everybody. How are you all doing?
Great.
So as she said, my name is Srirama Rao, and I'm actually currently at the university, which is not University of Minnesota, but at Virginia Commonwealth University, which is a little bit further east of Minneapolis. But I do maintain an adjunct appointment at University of Minnesota. But I am here today as one of the co-founders of the International Conference on One Medicine, One Science, and the chair of the iCOMOS series of conferences. So in my current role, and on behalf of the co-chairs of iCOMOS 2019, Dean Suwat and Dean Kwanchai, members of the organizing committee of Chiang Mai University and University of Minnesota, members of the NIH we have here from the National Institutes for Allergy and Infectious Disease and the National Institutes for Environmental Health Sciences, who have been strong partners with us over the years, and as well as the FAO. Thank you, Wantane, for all that you've done, and all the sponsors that Trevor was referring to. On behalf of everyone, I would like to extend a very warm welcome as well to the 4th International Conference on One Medicine, One Science, or iCOMOS 2019. This actually is the first conference that we have held that is jointly convened by two universities, Chiang Mai University and University of Minnesota. And we are so delighted to be hosting this event in this beautiful city of Chiang Mai in Thailand. Now, before I make additional remarks, I do want to take this opportunity to thank President Niue for everything that he has done, Vice President Rome and Vice President Sampan, for all that you have done to allow this conference to take place in a way that wouldn't have happened but for your support. So thank you so much for what you've done. I do want to, and I also want to really congratulate and acknowledge the hard work done by the iCOMOS 2019, the local organizing committee led by the leadership of Dean Kwanchai, Dean Suwat, Associate Dean Niao, I don't know where he is, Gaydang, and a number of other people who've done an outstanding job of pulling this conference together and this wonderful program that they've put. So I want to, on behalf of everyone, acknowledge all your hard work and truly appreciate everything that you have done. For those of you who are not familiar, the concept of One Medicine, One Science actually evolved out of a strategic plan at the University of Minnesota, initially at the College of Veterinary Medicine and then throughout the university, and basically embraces the concept that the problems to, or the solutions to global problems that we have today, these real societal issues, can only be solved through an interdisciplinary effort and a collaborative manner. And it's really spectacular to see that this vision that we started with our initial conference a few years ago has grown exponentially over the years through the conferences that we have seen. So, like Trevor mentioned, this is the first conference that we are hosting outside of the United States. And we are thrilled that with all the collaborations that we have with Thailand, in Chiang Mai University and the other universities as well, that Thailand was elected as the first place where we are going to have an international meeting. Hopefully one of many, and you're going to hear more at the end of the conference from the delegates from Chile who will talk about the planning of iCOMOS 2020, which will be held in another fascinating town called Santiago in Chile. So more about that. I suppose if you look at the audience in just this room, we have, I forgot I had the clicker in my hand. So if you just look at the audience in this room and the number of people who have registered, we roughly have people from about 36 countries who are in attendance. Now, if you just look at the number of countries represented here, we have people from all over the world. And if you look at the various iCOMOS conferences that we have held over the years, it's roughly people from about 50 to 60 countries who have attended iCOMOS meetings. So this has truly become a global community. Now, if we look at what iCOMOS attempts to do, or what this concept of one medicine and one science is all about, in one sense, it is trying to advance the science behind One Health. And we're attempting to do that by convening, by training, and by disseminating information about pressing issues that we have societally, we are facing as it pertains to the health of humans and animals and the environments we live in. We also want these iCOMOS meetings to serve as a platform for developing science-based policies that we get through input and the knowledge from medicine and sciences in all its disciplines. And that is truly important to realize, that this is not just any one discipline that can solve the societal issues that we're dealing with. It also aims to publish and disseminate this information so that, end of the day, the outcomes of the meeting that we have, the workshops and the different things that we do, need to reach the end users and the decision makers. They are the people who also need to get this information so they can enact on that. So we have actually heard people who have attended iCOMOS meetings and tell us that it's not enough to just host these conferences once every year or once every 2 years, as we were doing in the past, but to have this kind of information delivered in a continuum. So we are putting together, you'll be hearing more about this, the launch of the Consortium on One Medicine, One Science, or COMOS, and there's more information currently available at this website called comosglobal.org. So you'll be hearing much more about this, and so please stay tuned. Clearly, we've hosted a number of these events, and now we are trying to put this into practice through this consortium as well. So the theme of the conference here is One World, One Medicine, One Science, a way forward to better health. So what is it that we are attempting to do? Really, we are interested in understanding the societal issues that we are facing, health issues, that are interconnected and globally relevant, because those are the ones that we will all need to have, we'll have to have a global approach towards solving these issues as well. So, there we go. So as we look at what these issues are, I think one thing is for sure. A lot of what we are dealing with today has to do with the fact that the population on this earth is expected to reach, based on some conservative estimates, almost 10 billion people in under just 30 years. A lot of it is because people are living longer, life expectancy is longer, but as people live longer and population grows, there is going to be an enormous pressure on resources. People will expect better health, better education, and better well-being. If we look at what population increase will also imply, we'll need to have better food security, and not just food security, food safety as well, and we heard that just now. We have issues dealing with communities and well-being. We'll be dealing with, and we'll be hearing so much about the issue as populations grow, of migration of animals and humans. In terms of globalization, what it means. There are economic issues, there are political issues, there are health issues. We're going to deal with all of those. And then as people age and we get older, a lot of societies are dealing with issues with aging itself. And on the flip side, you have certain geographies where you have many young people, and that puts additional burden on societies as well. And then we heard about a reference to the environment. We as humans are contributing to a lot of significant changes that are taking place in the environment. And this in turn is affecting the climate and what have you. So these are really global issues that impact health in more ways than one. iCOMOS has been trying to address these things, those that are largely interconnected. And so if you look at the theme of iCOMOS 2019, and then we're looking at what is the way to, forward for a better health, we've tried to pick on some thematic areas that are interconnected, tied to population growth and issues, infectious disease, to how global One Health initiatives can bring some of these issues together, to issues related to environment and climate change, to natural disasters that are interconnected, and ultimately public health issues related to antimicrobial resistance and food safety. So I'll touch on briefly on each of these and see how these are truly interconnected and why we all as global citizens need to come around and be part of the solutions for these issues. If we just look at infectious disease, we can all agree that there are no borders that can contain infectious disease today. These infectious diseases are growing and they're proliferating because we live in a world of globalization. We have people and animals that are migrating, and with that, vectors that move around. Then there's the issue of trade. We have plant products and animal products that are moving around, and this is all a confluence of things added with other things that lead into this issue of infectious disease. So to talk a lot more about this at a very high level, we have the lead of the Emerging Threats Program from USAID, Dennis Carroll, who's going to talk about infectious disease world without borders, boosting immunity, and this is slated for Thursday. Actually tied to that talk, there's a fantastic session that's been put together by the National Institutes for Allergy and Infectious Disease, and the whole idea there is what is One Medicine and One Science doing in terms of developing new therapeutics and new modalities of treatment, and they will particularly bring to your attention the latest discoveries and practices that are happening in the realm of monoclonal antibodies and vaccines as it pertains to infectious disease. So I'm fascinated to hear what these latest interventions are. So as we look at populations again, we are dealing with perhaps today in this day and age and one of the greatest crises of mobilization of people. The Syrian civil war, I think, is a great example, in a bad way, of course, of how many millions of people have got displaced. Roughly 6 million people have fled Syria. Another 6 million people are just displaced within Syria. This is a huge humanitarian crisis. But Syria is not the only place. If we look at sub-Saharan Africa, the greater than 26% of global refugees who are there, and we see of all the issues in Latin America and South America, and in Southeast Asia. So this is a huge problem that puts an enormous burden on economics, on politics, and then health. So to discuss the issue of migration and migrants and health, we have put together a whole panel discussion that will talk about what are the issues and how can we build sustainability in some sense. There's also going to be a discussion, there's going to be this discussion not only on what the issues are, but we have to have also workforce in place to address these issues, both within borders and both outside of these borders. And so this is going to be discussed in an entire plenary presentation on Thursday, and they have put together an exciting program about that. Coming back to this issue of migration, aside from people, if we look at migration of land-based animals and birds, this is a huge problem in that these animals, wildlife, and what have you, move around from one geography to the other and are a cause that, and can lead to spreading of infectious diseases. Wild birds are particularly a major issue. They move from one body of water mass to the other. And if you just look at the example of what happened in the state of Minnesota a few years ago, we had the highly pathogenic avian influenza outbreak, H5N2, that caused the death of millions of birds and huge economic losses in the state of Minnesota. Again, through a one medicine, one science approach, we put together a think tank of people from various disciplines, government, academia, public-private partnerships, to discuss what happened, what needs to be done, and how to prevent events like this from happening again in the future. The multi-sectoral approach of problem solving is crucial, and so there will be a lot of discussion around this conference, and several people who are involved in the problem solving of this are here, because the information that comes out of events like this, meetings like this, it's been great that something like this has not happened in Minnesota again. The lessons learned must be spread elsewhere, and that is what is important about meetings such as this. The challenge that we have is truly the global flyways. There is no strong wall that you can build, no matter how beautiful you want to make it, that can contain these birds from moving from one side to the other. This is a huge challenge and a potential for spread of zoonotic diseases. We all know that. How do we deal with it? So I think we need to take a more holistic approach, a one medicine, one science-based approach, where sciences of different elements come together and try and understand what is the interconnectedness and how can we address some of these issues. So you've probably seen this slide and heard this many times. 75% of all emerging and re-emerging diseases that are going to happen in the 21st century, based on what USAID is saying, might be of zoonotic origin. So we have a huge challenge on our hands. To discuss this in a much broader detail, we have a panel discussion that will look at this interface of animals, humans, and the environment, and to figure out what is the way forward so that we can be more effective. The organizing committee has put together case studies that will talk about issues of zoonosis in the Philippines, the example of emerging Ebola, and the issue of rabies. And Thailand is a case study, but there's so many colleagues from Indonesia here where it is a huge problem there too, and in several other parts of the world as well. I think this whole issue of global One Health is really, truly remarkable, that it can, at a very high level, try to understand how these issues are interconnected and how one medicine and one science-based approach can attempt to understand what the challenges are and what are the opportunities in tracking and addressing some of these issues. So there's actually a focused discussion of how it relates to issues within Southeast Asia that'll be discussed as part of a panel discussion. I think we can all agree that because of the disturbances that we as humans in a large role have played, whether it's due to deforestation or landmass reusing or what have you, the disturbances and the disruption to the environment that we have caused has started bringing us in closer proximity to wildlife in ways that it was never meant to be. What this is doing is causing greater interaction between humans and wildlife in ways that it was never meant to be, and increasing the vulnerability to different diseases, including zoonotic diseases. And I think the Ebola outbreak in 2014-15 is a tragic reminder of environmental disturbances that really caused this outbreak there. And we can all agree, and that the science is perhaps indisputable and we can't refute the science behind it, that the environmental disturbances that we are part to blame have actually played a role in the climate change that we are seeing as well. And the ramifications of this at the level of health and economics and all kinds of things are quite immense. So let's just look at pollution. industrial pollution, and pollution that is indoor pollution also, cooking and what have you, in different parts of the world, has made a huge impact to the health and well-being of people all around. Urbanization, another massive issue where cities are growing, the number of automobiles are increasing, smog is on the rise, more particulate and pollution in the air, which is causing more cancer, more respiratory diseases, more cardiovascular diseases. These are all major issues that we are dealing with. So to discuss this in a greater detail, we have a whole session that is looking at the impact on the next generation prenatal care and impact. And there's going to be a case study looking at the role of biomass burning and the issues that you have right here in Thailand and some of the regions around here. Along those lines, I think, as I just mentioned, we can all see what's happening around us, that environment that we are messing with in some sense, some of it is beyond control, is impacting climate change and therefore the ecosystems that we all live in. To discuss this in more detail, we have a whole plenary session that's going to look at what kind of warning systems might be there. And we need to be aware, to be better prepared to deal with some of these issues. One thing that is kind of underappreciated with the impact on climate change is the impact on mental health. And so I was very glad to see that that was a focus of discussion here at this conference, and we're going to talk about the impact of mental health as in case studies within Thailand, as well as a case study in Taiwan of the impact of climate change. We're also seeing the big impact of environmental change leading to climate change on these natural disasters. They are just increasing. It's all around us. We can blame humans for a lot of these issues, maybe not everything, including land use modifications, including burning of fossil fuels, deforestation. But the net result that we are seeing all around us is we have increased drought, or in other places there is increased intensity of these storms that we see around us, or the cyclones that we see are stronger and more intense winds that we are seeing, or the monsoons that you have in Southeast Asia are getting more and more wetter. These are all things that you're seeing around, and the impact of that is multifold. It's economic, it's political, and then there's this whole health ramification of what happens following any of these natural disasters. So there is an increased pressure on having management systems in place, disaster management systems in place to address when one of these natural disasters that keep happening so often now. And to discuss this in greater detail, we have a whole session on climate change and disaster research that is being, it's on Wednesday that you will hear this panel discussion. And the National Institutes for Environmental Health Sciences has actually put together a whole concurrent session to look at disaster research response and what one medicine and one science approach can leverage to address some of these issues. You have these natural disasters, and then you have these unintended or unpredictable kind of disasters that happen. And then there's this huge public health issue. Let's just take the example of what happened here in Thailand a year ago. You had the sad situation where your youth soccer team got trapped in those caves, and the whole world was riveted and anxiously waiting to see the rescue of these young people. It was a miraculous recovery. Some very brave men, one of whom lost their lives, really ensured that all these young people were rescued from the caves. But it set the whole question about public health. What was the mental health of these young people? What are the infectious disease ramifications for these young people? Did they come in contact with animal systems in the caves that might be an issue for infectious or zoonotic diseases? And what are the lessons learned? To discuss this in greater detail, we have actually a full plenary session that will look at what did we learn through this? What kind of crisis communication do we need to have in place? And how can we leverage this, God forbid, if it happens somewhere else? So the last part that I want to just reflect on is the issue of the public health impact on antimicrobial resistance and food safety. This is a classic example where medicines and food, as desperately as we need them, they're also the cause for the problems that we are seeing in society today. Let's just take antimicrobial resistance. Penicillin was discovered, what, about 75 years ago? And with the advent of other antimicrobials, we started saving the lives of humans and people and animals alike. And then we started making stronger and stronger antimicrobials. And guess what? These bugs got stronger. And we started developing resistance. These bugs started developing resistance to the same drugs. And now the same populations and diseases that we thought we could save, these are the same people who are increasingly more vulnerable. So it is estimated by the year 2050, if we don't make drastic changes, we might end up having about 10 million deaths a year just because of antimicrobial resistance. And this is a complicated issue. In certain geographies, you have indiscriminate use of antimicrobials, antibiotics. In other areas, and this is leading to whole changes in the gut microbiome and just the way we are just beginning to understand what it might be doing. And in other areas, it's a whole welfare issue where food animals need to be given antibiotics in certain geographies, and then there's this concern that it ends up in the human chain. So we're dealing with welfare issue on one side and other issues that all kind of tie into this. So we need to be really mindful of how this thing is playing out. And there is a whole session that you will be hearing a lot more about the impact of antibiotics on both humans, animals, and the agricultural, and the linkages with the environment. Finally, as I mentioned a little while ago, with this impact on growing populations, we are going to see a need for greater than 60% improvement in food production and food security. While we are making great impact on food security, the concern is on the food safety side, right? We need to ensure that the food that we are making is safe. The fear that we live today is that because of unintended or intended reasons, there might be contamination of food systems, and we have to be really mindful of addressing that. And this is a global challenge. And so at iCOMOS, we have put together a whole plenary presentation on a topic that's entitled Food Safety Perspectives in the 21st Century, and what are the policies that are evolving, and you'll hear much more about that. So in closing, I'd like to hope that this conference has attempted to put together these interconnected issues that are really globally challenging issues, but with the hope that the global audience that is there here, we are also part of the solution in finding out approaches to the problems that we have today. I do have one sad story to tell you or share with you, and that is Professor Mike Murtaugh. Many of you who have attended previous iCOMOS conferences have seen him. He was one of the co-founders of this concept of One Medicine, One Science, and also a co-chair of the iCOMOS series of conferences. And he actually was a member of the organizing committee of this latest iCOMOS 2019 as well. He just succumbed to pancreatic cancer and passed away a few months ago. For those of you who are not aware, till a few months back, he was actively involved in all the Skype conversations that we were having with the local organizing committee, and he had greatly impacted how the whole conference has evolved over the years, and in fact, the planning of this particular conference. I met Mike 2 days before he passed away, and he said he didn't know he was going to die then so soon, but he said, I know what, iCOMOS 2019 will be a big success, and he said that with a big smile. And while Mike is not here today, I know wherever he is, he's smiling on us, and he's wishing this conference a great success, and I know it'll be a wonderful conference. So thank you, Mike, for everything you've done. So with that, I guess the spirit of One Medicine, One Science lives on through the conferences that we have had, and we are going to have this great conference here and the future ones in Chile and back in the US, and in the form of the consortium on One Medicine, One Science. So with that said, I'd like to conclude my remarks and tell you that we're delighted, all of us from University of Minnesota, and so grateful to the Chiang Mai University Organizing Committee for having put together this fantastic program. We roughly have about 60-odd speakers and some 90 poster presenters who will all be presenting great ideas that they've been doing. And as I've always said, continue to meet your old friends, but make new friends and new contacts and walk away with new collaborations and ideas that you had never planned before. So with that said, thank you so much, and welcome to Chiang Mai and to iCOMOS 2019. And it is my pleasure now to welcome Vice President Rome to speak a few words and welcome our guest, or who is our, you are? Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so very much for your insightful reflections and, of course, inspiring opening statements.